TIFU by not bothering to check what flour I've been using for 5+ years. So, I didn't realize this foo until today. It's kinda minor, but I feel so dumb because of it. I'm an American living in Japan. I've studied Japanese for like 15 years. Lucky enough to have classes available in JHS and HS and then majored in it in university. And I've worked here for over 5 years. While I'd been studying Japanese for a while before coming here for my job. I'd never lived in Japan before, and obviously there was a big learning curve when I first moved. Especially with the little things that you don't learn in a classroom. Aside from studying Japanese, my other hobbies include cooking and baking, which often requires flour. In the US I'd just use all-purpose flour. But of course that's not what it's called in Japan. They categorize and label flours differently here. So, when going to the grocery store for the first time, do you think I looked at the shelf of assorted flours with various unfamiliar kanji and words and thought, maybe I should whip out my phone with its infinite sources of information, including Google Translate, and an NJPN dictionary app, and figure out just what the fuck all these types of flours are before I try buying some? Quote, nope. I looked at the package art that conveniently includes pictures of what sorts of cooking it could be used in and discerned that, oh, this one has pictures of bread on it. Must be bread flour. Don't need that. Oh, this one has tempura, cake, and noodles on it. That's quite a random assortment. Must be all-purpose considering all of the various purposes it seems to be used for. And immediately bought the bag with what I perceived to be the most all-purpose of the 3 or 4 varieties I saw before me. Ever since that day, for 5+ years, I've bought the same kind without a thought about the actual words on the package. Always going off of the art on it instead. The thing is, sometimes when I've made baked goods they would come out too soft. Something would always be a little off with my brownies or cookies and they'd fall apart just slightly too easily. I've also been wanting to get into pizza making and bread making. The handful of times I've tried making bread from recipes that use AP flour, it just never turned out right. The dough never held together quite enough no matter how much or how little I kneaded it, and the texture was always wrong. Recently I've started following our pizza and just been really inspired to try making my own pizza. Especially since there's no delivery pizza or decent pizza shops in my area. I bought a silicone baking mat that would make kneading a much easier task than on my shitty, unsealed wooden table. So the other night, instead of my usual easy, no-knead same-night pizza dough recipe, I decided to try a small-scale version of Ken Forkish's one-day, overnight pizza dough. Long story short, the pizza was still tasty, but the dough was so soft that it stretched too thin and tore easily and felt like it hadn't developed any gluten at all despite 24 hours of rise and rest. It tastes fine, but what the hell is wrong with my dough? Is my house too cold? Did I knead it wrong? Are my measurements fucked? Why is it falling apart so easily? Quote, it was plaguing my thoughts so much that I woke up still thinking about it when my alarm went off this morning. So I did what I should have done 5 years ago and Googled what types of flour are available in Japan. And found the answer immediately in English. I found out the 3 main types. There's Hikarakiko, Bao Li Fen, which literally means weak power flour. Why is it called that? Because of the 3 types. It has the lowest amount of gluten. Hence why it's used for cakes and tempura batter where you don't need much gluten. It's usually translated to cake, pastry flour. Then there's Churikiko, Zhang Li Fen, aka medium power flour, which is the mid-tier of gluten percentage. And according to the blog I found, is the equivalent to AP flour. Last is the highest one. Kyorokiko. Chang Li Fen. Strong power flour, being the bread flour that I'd recognized because it has pictures of bread on it. I double-checked the bag of what I thought was AP. And sure enough, it was the weak cake flour. That's why my doughs have always been too soft. That's why my cookies came out not chewy enough. And that's why my breads never turned out well. 5 years I thought I was bad at kneading or something, but turns out I just needed to open Google for 5 seconds. I did buy a bag of the medium flour after work and have a batch of pizza dough resting to cook tomorrow. So here's hoping I can make better baked goods from now on. Lol. TLDR. Moved to Japan. Bought what I thought was AP flour without bothering to read the package. Have been using low-gluten cake flour for 5+ years, thinking I just wasn't good enough to make bread, no matter how much I tried. Edit. Changed my abbreviation for Japanese from JAP to JPN, since I made an honest mistake and people are saying it's cringe in bad faith. I didn't realize flour power was such a huge thing in Japan. I hope someday you recover from this trauma. LMFAO. This is the funniest form of being confidently incorrect. Was completely expecting this to be cricket flour. Similar thing happened to me. I was in Brazil and got some water stuck in my ear. Headed to a pharmacy, asked for swimmer's ear, and finally had to mime out eardrops to the clerk. And he brings me a small bottle of what looks like eardrops. I use the drops and keep the bottle in my toiletries bag. Time passes. Years go by. The bottle stays in my bag, more of a momentum than anything. I move to Brazil. Learn Portuguese. Stumble upon my trusty ear cleanser. It was contact lens solution. Some remain ignorant and stumble in the dark their entire lives. Got lucky. As it were. What's done is done. What is not yet done are cookies and pizzas of appropriate structural integrity. When all else fails, read the instructions. Just don't wait 5 years. This trips people up in more ways than people realize. For example, let's say that you're making noodles. In America, if you are making a noodle that is meant to be stored dry, then you want to use the semolina flour and water. If instead you are making a noodle that you will cook fresh, you should use all-purpose flour and eggs. And if you are making a ramen noodle, then you can technically get fancy. But you can get by with all-purpose flour, water, and consui. In the U.S., our delineation in terms of protein, gluten content is something like cake flour, all-purpose flour, bread flour. Most other places, they just go by gluten content. Personally, I would have bought a bag each of the medium and strong flour. For pizza dough, I usually use bread flour unless I've run out and don't feel like going to the store. If you have a Tommy's nearby, they have lots of varieties of flour. You might find one that will suit for your pizza. Easily the best foo, since it isn't just a work of fiction written by a horny teenager. I congratulate you. That being said, your post made me realize why cakes I've made from scratch tend to be a little more tough than I'd like. Go to Japanese to share your journey of discovery, and I guarantee you will feel better about yourself. Recently got into cooking and my friend gave me a recipe for ribs. I have never cooked ribs. The only meat I had ever cooked was chicken. And the first time I cooked chicken was only a month before this. Their ribs looked fantastic. Just beautiful. So my boyfriend went to the store and bought me some ribs to mess with. Mine were awful. Receding from the bone. Tough and rubbery. Just gross. I did everything their recipe said. The whole recipe was pretty much leaving it in the oven for a few hours. The dry rub and glaze tasted amazing. Though my oven just ran too hot. Or that I left them in the broiler too long. Or that I cooked them for slightly too long. Or maybe I was supposed to cover them when they were sitting in the fridge overnight? A few days later I asked my boyfriend for the receipt for the ribs. They were beef. The recipe was for pork. That day I learned that while pork can handle being cooked low and slow, beef cannot. Tried the ribs again. But this time with the right kind of animal. And they turned out amazing. ETA. I know what I did wrong, LMAO. I don't need advice. Also, I don't even like beef. Next time, get the strong power flour for pizza. It will be even better, and make sure to let the dough develop for a day or so. That's why my doughs have always been too soft. That's why my cookies came out not chewy enough. And that's why my breads never turned out well. Quote. And that explains the abrasion on your palm. Sorry. Ace Ventura flashbacks there. Is there such a thing as an obligatory pizza tax for this? At least I would like a picture once it's done. Okay, well, now that I feel sufficiently emotionally invested in this story, I'll be expecting an update to see how the pizza turns out. Oh hey, that's my blog. Glad you figured out the issue. And glad you haven't literally been using the same bag of flour for 5+ years as I originally thought. I identify with this heavily as I just moved to Hungary from the US last year and am also an avid baker. Chocolate chip cookies are my specialty, and I told all of my friends I'd make them some when I got there. At the grocery store there were 5 or 6 different types of flour, so I also went off the pictures. I then proceeded to make 4 dozen of the breadiest, cakey cookies I've ever had. I thought it had to be the oven or even the amount of baking soda, and tried again. Still bad. Then my roommate told me I likely used the wrong flour, and I am still ashamed to this day. Update us tomorrow if the pizza turns out good.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.